Have you ever run into someone from your past and felt your whole world stop, just for a second? Imagine locking eyes with the person who once broke your heart, right when you least expect it. Would you freeze? Would you smile? Would you wonder if you're really over it, or if that old hurt is still hiding inside you? That's exactly where Sophia Miller finds herself. Picture this. She's finally moving forward, finally breathing again. And suddenly, her ex-husband Lucas is right there, showing off his glamorous new fiancée in front of everyone. And you know what? Here's the twist. Sophia isn't standing alone anymore. By her side is Ethan Blackwell, a man whose kindness runs deeper than his billions, and whose quiet strength just might help her write a whole new story. But let me ask you, what happens when old wounds get dragged into the spotlight? When secrets start bubbling up, and loyalty gets tested in front of an audience that's just waiting for someone to stumble? If you've ever wondered what real closure looks like, or if the best revenge is living well, not shouting back, trust me, you're going to want to hear Sophia's story. Stick with me, because this isn't just about heartbreak or scandal. This is about finding yourself, holding your head high, and proving that sometimes your quietest comeback is the one nobody ever saw coming. Trust me, this one's going to hit close to home. Are you ready? Rain lashed the windows of the cozy cafe on Maple Avenue as Sophia Miller sipped her cappuccino. It was an unusually cold afternoon in late April, and the cafe, called Willow and Bean, was bustling with customers escaping the storm. Sophia, dressed in a simple navy blouse and jeans, felt a curious mix of calm and residual tension. Just a year ago, she could never have pictured herself sitting here, at peace after the emotional hurricane that was her divorce. Her thoughts drifted back to the day she and Lucas had finalized the paperwork. There had been anger, regret, and enough tears to fill an ocean. They had started out as wide-eyed college lovers, convinced that love alone could conquer anything. But with time, Lucas's drive turned into relentless competition, and Sophia's dreams of a caring partner collapsed under the weight of constant criticism. Arguments erupted over money, lifestyles, and the future. Eventually, the cracks split wide open. A blaring horn outside snapped her from her memories. She glanced at her phone, checking for messages. Ethan Blackwell, the man she'd been seeing for 2 months, had promised to meet her here after his meeting. Together, they were supposed to head to an art gallery opening hosted by her close friend, Grace Lee, an up-and-coming curator. That familiar, cautious voice inside warned her not to expect too much. But Ethan had never given her any reason to doubt him. He was gentle, considerate, and surprisingly modest for someone whose generosity often left her speechless. At that moment, the bell above the cafe door jingled. Sophia looked up, expecting to see Ethan. Instead, her heart nearly stopped. Lucas Grant stepped inside, shaking off his umbrella. He hadn't changed much, still tall, still self-assured, still with that unmistakable edge of arrogance as he scanned the room. Instinctively, her stomach tightened. An old ache surfaced. She thought for a moment about ducking behind her coffee cup, but it was too late. He'd already seen her. "Sophia," Lucas said, approaching her table with a look of cautious curiosity. "Wow, long time no see." Lucas wore a charcoal suit that probably cost as much as a month's rent in downtown Boston. His hair, once wild and boyish, was now neatly styled. He looked every bit like the corporate success he'd always wanted to be. Lucas glanced at the empty seat across from her. Without waiting for an invitation, he pulled out the chair and sat down, ignoring the line of customers waiting behind him. Classic Lucas, he always had to be the center of attention. "Yes, it really has been a while," Sophia replied, trying to keep her voice even. Despite her best efforts to stay calm, her hands trembled a little, and she carefully set her coffee cup back on its saucer to steady herself. It was surreal, facing him again in such an ordinary moment. For a second, she wondered how life had treated him. She couldn't help but recall the bitter fights that led to their breakup, accusations over who supported the other more, who sacrificed, who earned more. She took a slow, measured breath, determined not to let old memories ruin her new sense of self. "You look good," Lucas went on. "I heard you moved back into the city. How have you been?" He tried to smile, but it looked a little forced. They weren't the same people who'd once shared everything. "I'm doing fine," Sophia replied. "Just taking things a day at a time. And you?" Busy as ever. I was just meeting a client nearby. He paused, drumming his fingers on the table. Listen, I know things ended badly, Lucas began. Sophia braced herself for him to bring up the past, maybe criticize her one last time. Instead, he cleared his throat and picked up a napkin, wiping at a spot on the table that didn't exist. Stalling. Maybe there was a touch of guilt. She saw it flicker in his eyes. But I do hope you're all right. I am, she said softly. She didn't know if that was entirely true or if she just wanted to believe it. Really? I'm okay. That was when the cafe door swung open again, letting in another gust of wind and drizzle. Sophia's heart lifted. Ethan walked in, scanning the room, tall and poised in a tailored navy blazer and matching slacks. He spotted Sophia, and a warm smile lit up his face. Lucas followed her gaze, confusion crossing his features. Sophia, Ethan said, making his way over with a quiet confidence. Sorry I'm late, the meeting ran long. He set a gentle hand on her shoulder and leaned down to give her a soft kiss on the cheek. Lucas arched an eyebrow. So this is? Sophia felt a quick, awkward flutter in her chest. Lucas, this is Ethan Blackwell. My boyfriend, Ethan. This is Lucas Grant, my ex-husband. The tension that settled over the table was almost physical. Ethan's expression stayed gracious. He extended his hand to Lucas, who shook it, but a little stiffly. Nice to meet you, Ethan said, keeping his composure. Likewise, Lucas replied, sounding polite, but his eyes gave him away. He studied Ethan carefully, sizing him up the way someone would size up a rival. Well, I'd better get going. I need to pick up Madison soon. Sophia felt a sharp jolt at the name. Madison. She vaguely remembered Lucas mentioning a coworker by that name during their last year together. A woman he'd seemed to admire a little too much, or maybe that was just her own insecurity. Either way, the mention of Madison's name swapped any trace of sadness with a low simmer of irritation. Lucas was engaged, apparently. She quickly composed herself, keeping her face neutral. Nice running into you, Sophia, Lucas went on, then nodded to Ethan. And it was nice meeting you, Mr. Blackwell. Maybe we'll cross paths again sometime. Ethan returned the smile politely. Perhaps. Take care. With that, Lucas slipped out of the cafe, leaving behind a faint trail of expensive cologne and a cloud of unanswered questions. Ethan pulled out a chair and sat down, placing a careful hand over Sophia's. Are you all right? He asked quietly. Sophia forced a smile, determined not to let the chance encounter throw her off. I'm okay, she murmured. Just surprising, that's all. He squeezed her hand gently. If he ever bothers you, or if you need space, just let me know. I can handle it. No, it's fine, she said quickly. I'm over him. At least I think I am. She let out a soft sigh, thinking about how Lucas's presence still made her chest feel tight. But even as she said it, Sophia couldn't ignore the old shadows stirring inside her. Her confidence, so carefully rebuilt after the divorce, flickered. For a fleeting moment, she was right back in those early days after Lucas left, when she'd stand in front of the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. She remembered every offhand remark about her looks, her work, or her value that had left invisible bruises. Now seeing him move on so seamlessly, with someone new, someone who fit so easily into the world Sophia always felt on the edge of, she felt a faint sting of inadequacy. Was she truly over him, or just pretending for Ethan's sake? Let's just go to the gallery. Grace is expecting us. Ethan nodded and stood, helping Sophia with her coat like a perfect gentleman. As they stepped back out into the rain-soaked street, Sophia realized Lucas had left her with 1,000 swirling thoughts she wasn't ready to unpack. What she didn't know was that this chance encounter was only the beginning of a tangled web that was about to unfold. A web that would pit old resentments against new hopes and reveal secrets so shocking that no one involved would walk away unchanged. 2 days later, Sophia found herself in a sunlit corner of her apartment, flipping through old photo albums she'd packed away after the divorce. She wasn't sure why she chose this moment to revisit those memories. Maybe seeing Lucas had stirred up a flood of nostalgia, good, bad, and everything in between. Her phone chimed. It was Grace, texting. Did you see the article in the Chronicle about Lucas's upcoming engagement party? Heard it's going to be massive, like Society page huge. You okay? Grace wrote. Sophia frowned and typed back quickly. I'm fine. Just a bit surprised. We ran into each other yesterday. Grace replied instantly, bombarding her with shocked emojis. Then, he's really showing off Madison. She's apparently from a powerful family. Rumor is they're throwing an over-the-top event next month. If you need backup, I'm here. Sophia exhaled slowly. So that was it. Lucas, always obsessed with status, was making his new engagement as public as possible. Deep down, a flicker of hurt burned. They'd once talked about renewing their vows for their 10-year anniversary, just a small ceremony with close friends. Now, that dream was meaningless, overshadowed by his big, flashy spectacle. Looking through the photos, her fingers landed on one from their college years. Lucas, hair a mess and eyes bright, arms wrapped around her outside their old dorm. The memory of that young, hopeful couple made her chest ache. How had things fallen apart so badly? She set the picture aside, determined not to let old feelings take over. Life had changed since the divorce. But as she closed the album, a rush of insecurity crept in, one she hadn't felt in months. She found herself wondering whether, deep down, she'd ever truly fit into the world Lucas so effortlessly inhabited. It wasn't just about money or social standing. It was about that persistent, gnawing doubt, the old voice in her head that sometimes whispered she'd never be enough. Even now, as her firm slowly grew and she claimed new successes, she sometimes feared it was all fragile. That one wrong step could send her tumbling back to where she'd started. Overlooked, undervalued, left behind. The thought of Lucas's engagement making society headlines triggered a wave of anxiety she couldn't easily shake. Did everyone still see her as the woman he left? Would anyone ever see her as more? Now, she ran her own small architecture firm, Miller Designs. She kept the last name for the business since it had been registered before the split. She was slowly building a loyal client base. And then there was Ethan, who had shown up in her life like a breath of fresh air. She thought of Ethan's gentle smile and warm demeanor. They'd met months ago at a charity gala that Grace had invited her to. He'd been keeping a low profile, introduced as a donor to various causes. They hit it off instantly, talking about art, design, and travel. She'd only learned a little about his wealth and his inheritance from his late grandfather, partial ownership in a huge tech company, because Ethan never liked discussing money. When he finally asked her out, she'd hesitated, unsure if she was ready. But something about Ethan made her feel safe. Their relationship had been quietly growing ever since. Still, that shadow of self-doubt sometimes lingered, especially after a run-in with the past. Could Ethan really see her for who she was, beyond the baggage, beyond the public narrative? Or would she always be fighting to prove her worth, to him, to herself, to the world? Her phone pinged again, pulling her out of her thoughts. This time, a message from Ethan himself. "Early dinner tonight? Or I can stop by your office and we can grab drinks after." Sophia smiled at the screen, feeling a wave of gratitude. She texted back, "Dinner sounds perfect. I'm about to head to the studio for a few hours, but I'll be free by 6. See you then." She closed up the photo albums and tucked them back in their dusty box, hoping she could do the same with the emotional baggage inside. Lucas and Madison's big engagement party would no doubt become the talk of the town. Still, Sophia reminded herself she just had to keep moving forward, focusing on her own life. The past was the past. Yet deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that her story with Lucas wasn't truly finished, and that the ex-husband she thought she'd left behind might one day reappear, dragging trouble with him. The chime above the door of the elegant French bistro jingled as Ethan guided Sophia inside, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Le Papillon was a high-end spot on Beacon Hill, known for its delicate soufflés and renowned wine list. Soft jazz floated through the air, mingling with the golden glow from vintage chandeliers. The maitre d' recognized Ethan immediately and led them to a private table tucked in a quiet corner, away from curious eyes. Sophia settled into her seat, taking in the gleaming silverware and crisp white linens. She noticed other couples nearby, some of them stealing glances at Ethan, as if they recognized him, or at least suspected he was someone important. It was something she'd gotten used to. Whenever they went out, there was always a subtle buzz of curiosity about Ethan. He handled it with quiet indifference, never revealing more than he had to. "I took the liberty of ordering your favorite red," Ethan said, his smile warm. "I thought we could celebrate your new contract." Sophia smiled back. Earlier that day, She'd signed a big contract with a boutique hotel group, an opportunity that could take her architecture studio to the next level. They discovered her work online and reached out after seeing her portfolio. "That's so thoughtful," she said. "I still can't believe they picked me." Ethan reached across the table and gently took her hand. "You deserve it. Congratulations." A server arrived with the wine, pouring them each a glass. They toasted quietly, the soft clink of crystal echoing in the cozy space. Sophia took a sip, the velvety wine warming her throat. They caught up about their day. Ethan mentioning an upcoming trip to London for a philanthropic conference, being careful not to go into too much detail about his business. Sophia talked excitedly about the designs she was planning for the hotel group. Halfway through dinner, her dish, a delicate risotto, his a perfectly seared salmon, Ethan cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he started, looking down at his plate as if rehearsing, "about introducing you to a few people in my world. Friends, business partners. I just want them to know about the amazing woman I'm with." Sophia paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "You do?" she asked, heart fluttering. They'd only been dating a couple of months, and it still felt new, fragile even. Meeting people from his world sounded overwhelming, especially since Ethan's circle was probably full of powerful, influential people. He nodded, putting down his napkin. "I don't want to push you," he said gently, "but there's a fundraiser next week. I'd really like you by my side, if that's okay." A swirl of emotions tugged at her. Excitement, curiosity, and just a hint of fear. "Of course," she replied softly. "I'd be honored." Ethan's face lit up. He reached for her hand again, gently tracing his thumb over her knuckles. "Thank you. I'm really happy to have you in my life, Sophia." They lingered over dessert, an exquisite flourless chocolate torte, and chatted about simpler things. Favorite books, childhood memories, places they dreamed of visiting. Sophia let herself drift in the warmth of possibility, finally letting go of the darker corners of her past. Lucas's name hovered unspoken between them, but she felt no urge to mention him tonight. This was her moment. With Ethan, she felt free from regrets. By the time they finished, the bistro was closing. They stepped out into the brisk night air. "I'll drive you home," Ethan said, guiding her to a sleek black sedan waiting at the curb. She remembered the first time he'd arrived with a driver, how she'd insisted on taking a cab to meet him because the idea of a chauffeured car felt too lavish. Over time, she'd grown used to it, though she still insisted on paying her own way when she could. Inside the car, Ethan's arm slipped around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, finally relaxed. She closed her eyes, letting the city lights flicker past the windows as they wound through the streets. The quiet hum of the engine lulled her into a peaceful haze. But as the city slipped by outside, a subtle tension coiled beneath Sophia's calm exterior. The invitation to Ethan's world, galas, exclusive dinners, influential circles, was thrilling, yet part of her wondered if she truly belonged there. Would the people he called friends see her as a peer or as an outsider with a messy past? The prospect of standing by Ethan's side in rooms full of old money families and polished power couples brought back the same old anxieties. The fear of not measuring up, of being exposed as someone not quite right for this glittering world. She reminded herself that Ethan saw something in her, something real, but deep down she sometimes questioned if she could ever see it in herself. For a brief, shining moment, she let herself believe her life could move forward, no longer weighed down by the heartbreak that had once consumed her. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of Sophia's architecture studio. She sat at her drafting table, carefully putting the finishing touches on sketches for the boutique hotel project. Pencil lines became elegant arches and soft curves, capturing her vision for a modern but inviting space. The desk phone rang, startling her out of her focused zone. "Sophia Miller, Miller Designs," she answered, tucking her pencil behind her ear. "Sophia, it's me," came Grace's excited voice. "You're not going to believe this. I just heard from a friend at the Boston Chronicle. Lucas and Madison are hosting an engagement party at the Four Seasons next week. And get this, they're inviting everyone from your old social circle. Friends, old acquaintances, even some of your mutual clients." Sophia's stomach tightened. "Why would they invite me, though?" "Well, that's the thing. Word is, Lucas doesn't want you there, but Madison apparently insisted. She told the Chronicle she wants a harmonious future, or maybe she just wants to show off. Grace paused. I know you probably don't care, but I thought you should know, just in case you get an invitation. Sophia exhaled slowly. She hadn't expected Lucas's engagement to become such a public spectacle, but knowing his thirst for social status, it shouldn't have surprised her. Thanks for the heads up, Grace. If I do get invited, I'll think carefully before responding. Just remember, you don't owe them anything, Grace added. By the way, how's Ethan? At the mention of Ethan, Sophia smiled. He's good. He wants to introduce me to his circle at some big fundraiser. Actually, that's next week too. I have a feeling my calendar's about to get crazy, Sophia said. Grace laughed. Better you than me. But I'm excited for you. If you need a +1 to Lucas's circus, or just a bodyguard, I'm here. They hung up, and Sophia stared at her phone for a moment. She was certain that Lucas's engagement party would be a sparkling showcase for Boston's elite and corporate crowd. Madison Brooks, Sophia now remembered, came from an old-money Boston family and was rumored to be a sharp corporate attorney. Lucas probably saw her as both a romantic partner and a strategic move. That afternoon, a delivery courier arrived with a large cream envelope embossed in gold. Sophia's pulse jumped as she saw the return address. Mr. Lucas Grant and Miss Madison Brooks. She sighed. It was true. They really had invited her. Inside, the invitation was thick and glossy, detailing the upcoming soiree at the Four Seasons. Sophia folded it back into the envelope, torn between tossing it out and saving it. Part of her suspected this was a power play from Madison, an attempt to appear gracious, or maybe to rub Sophia's nose in their new status. As the evening wore on, the invitation seemed to take on more weight, almost taunting her from across the room. She found herself replaying every past slight, every moment when she'd felt second best or invisible in Lucas's world. Would showing up mean reclaiming her confidence, or only risking more humiliation? The thought of being scrutinized by people who remembered her as Lucas's wife, not for her own successes, triggered an old, familiar anxiety. Later that evening, unwinding at home, Sophia turned the invitation over in her mind. She decided to share it with Ethan and see what he thought. Maybe they could skip it all together. She had no desire to watch Lucas flaunt his fiancée. But then again, a small voice wondered if it might feel good to walk in with someone who truly valued her, to show she wasn't the broken woman Lucas had left behind. She pulled out her phone and called Ethan. He answered on the second ring. Sophia. Hey, I was just thinking about you. Well, I just got something interesting, Sophia said, a wry note in her voice. An invitation to Lucas's engagement party. Ethan paused. How do you feel about that? Sophia curled up on her sofa, hugging a throw pillow, feeling conflicted. Part of me doesn't want to go. But part of me, I'm curious. Maybe I want closure, or maybe I just want to prove to myself I'm okay. And Madison specifically invited me. It almost feels like a trap, but maybe I'm just overthinking. She didn't say out loud how afraid she was of looking small or of being whispered about as the ex who couldn't move on. Her doubts swirled quietly beneath her bravado, mixing with the lingering fear that no matter how far she'd come, she'd never quite measure up in the eyes of people who still saw her as a footnote to Lucas's story. Ethan's tone was gentle. I'll support whatever you want to do. If you want me by your side, say the word. If not, we'll do something else, somewhere far from that scene. Sophia's tension eased at his understanding. I'll think about it. In the meantime, your fundraiser is still coming up. I'll just focus on that for now. Little did Sophia know, the events ahead were about to collide in ways she couldn't imagine. The worlds of Lucas, Madison, and Ethan were on a collision course, and when they finally crossed, the fallout would be like nothing Sophia had ever known. The following week arrived in a rush of nerves and excitement. Sophia stood before the mirror in Ethan's penthouse, an airy, modern space overlooking the Boston skyline. She wore an elegant emerald green gown. Her gown hugged her figure beautifully. Grace had stopped by earlier to help style her hair into soft, shining waves. Now, Sophia's reflection radiated a quiet confidence, even if she wasn't sure she truly felt it. Ethan, adjusting his cufflinks, stepped up beside her. You look stunning, he murmured, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be, Sophia replied with a small smile. I still have no idea who's going to be there. Ethan paused for a moment. It'll be a mix: philanthropists, investors, a few celebrities who support different causes. These events can be overwhelming, so if at any point you want to leave, just say the word. They arrived at the grand ballroom of the Laurelwood Hotel, greeted by flashing cameras and a stream of wealthy donors stepping out of polished cars. Sophia stayed close to Ethan, feeling a rush of relief as they finally made it past the entrance into the elegantly decorated hall. Chandeliers glittered overhead, while servers glided through the crowd with trays of champagne. Almost immediately, a striking woman with auburn hair rushed forward. "Ethan, darling," she exclaimed, kissing both of his cheeks. "So good to see you. And who is this gorgeous woman?" Ethan placed a reassuring hand on Sophia's back. "Celeste, meet Sophia Miller, my girlfriend." "Sophia, this is Celeste Ramos, a board member of the Global Arts Foundation." Celeste's eyes sparkled. "So lovely to meet you, my dear. Ethan tells me you're an architect. How wonderful. We must chat about our new cultural center we're building in Cambridge." They exchanged warm pleasantries, Sophia feeling a little dazed by Celeste's exuberance. As more people gathered, the conversations all followed a familiar script. Polite introductions, gentle curiosity about Sophia's background, and then talk quickly, shifting to philanthropic work or business interests. Sophia soon realized most people here moved in circles of incredible wealth, building alliances through donations and exclusive events. Midway through the evening, she stepped away to admire a display of the foundation's recent accomplishments: photos of new hospitals in remote regions, art scholarships awarded to underprivileged youth, and restoration projects in endangered habitats. She was quietly reading a plaque about a conservation effort in Kenya when a voice startled her from behind. "Sophia Miller? Is that really you?" The voice was male, vaguely familiar. She turned to find Blake Harrington, an old acquaintance of Lucas's, and someone Lucas had once discussed real estate deals with. Blake's eyes widened in recognition. "I almost didn't believe it." "How are you?" Sophia forced a polite smile. "I'm well." "Didn't expect to see you here," Blake replied, swirling the wine in his glass. "I'm a sponsor. Always good for business to support a worthy cause." "Right, causes," Blake replied, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Actually, I've got a table right next to Lucas Grant at the engagement party next week. Are you planning on going?" Sophia felt her posture stiffen. "Still deciding," she said carefully. Blake let out a low chuckle. "You should go. Lucas has been bragging non-stop about his new fiancée. Something about her father's connections in D.C. He's definitely on a roll. You might want to see what you're missing." A flicker of annoyance passed through Sophia. "Trust me, I'm not missing anything. Besides, I'm here with someone else," she said, glancing around for Ethan, hoping to end the awkward exchange. Blake took the hint. "All right, I'll let you go. Take care, Sophia." He ambled off, wineglass in hand, leaving her with a bitter taste of the past. Sophia exhaled, leaning against the display. Suddenly, a warm hand touched her shoulder. She turned to see Ethan, concern in his eyes. "Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just someone from my old life. Let's go get some air." He nodded and guided her out to the terrace, overlooking the sparkling city skyline. The cool night breeze brushed her cheeks. She closed her eyes, feeling Ethan standing behind her. "Sophia," he said quietly, "I know running into people from your past can bring up memories you'd rather forget, but I hope you know I'm here for you." She turned to face him, tears threatening to rise. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm fine, really. It's just my ex-husband's engagement party is coming up, and I guess I'm still working through the way he used to undermine me. I don't want to be the woman who can't let go." Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're not that woman. But if you decide you need to go to that engagement party for closure, I'll go with you." A small spark of gratitude warmed her chest. "I appreciate that," she said, stepping closer, resting her head on his shoulder. High above the city, under the glow of the skyscraper lights, Sophia sensed that events were swirling beyond her control. Something told her Lucas's extravagant celebration would be more than just a party. Secrets were stirring, some that might change everything she believed about her past and her future. The Four Seasons Hotel shimmered with opulence as Sophia arrived, hand in hand with Ethan. After much consideration, she decided that attending Lucas's engagement soiree was the final step she needed to fully close the door on her old marriage. Ethan, in a classic black tuxedo, was a pillar of support at her side. Sophia wore a midnight blue gown that set off her dark hair, and she felt a confidence she wished she'd known years ago. A red carpet lined the entrance, where paparazzi snapped photos of the city's notable guests, CEOs, politicians, and socialites, as they entered. A lavish floral arrangement filled the foyer, and classical music from a string quartet floated through the ballroom. Waiters moved gracefully among the guests, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Lucas appeared, sharp in a tailored suit, his expression flickering with surprise as he caught sight of Sophia and Ethan. At his side was his fiancée, Madison, ethereal in a shimmering silver gown, her auburn hair swept up in a graceful chignon. Madison's eyes glimmered with interest as she recognized Sophia. "Sophia, I'm so glad you could make it." Madison greeted her with a warm, practiced smile, extending a hand. "Lucas mentioned he ran into you not long ago." Sophia shook her hand, noticing the enormous diamond on Madison's finger, and pasted on her own polite smile. "Thank you for inviting me." Lucas cleared his throat. "Ethan," he said, nodding in acknowledgement. "Nice to see you again," Ethan replied quietly. "Likewise. Congratulations on your engagement." A brief, awkward pause hung between them, broken only when Madison touched Lucas's arm and excused them to greet other guests. Sophia let out a slow breath and gave Ethan a grateful look. "Well, that wasn't too bad," she whispered, though her heart was still racing. But as she watched Lucas and Madison glide away into the crowd, Sophia felt her composure slipping. All around her, the polished guests sparkled with effortless confidence, and for a moment she was certain every pair of eyes could see right through her borrowed calm. Old memories flickered, moments at Lucas's side when she'd felt invisible, his mother's pointed glances, the way certain friends had measured her with quiet judgment. It didn't matter that she stood beside Ethan now, that she wore a dress that made her feel beautiful. Some part of her still felt like the outsider at someone else's party. She forced herself to breathe, to remember who she was now, but the old fear, the fear of not belonging, of being whispered about as the ex, gnawed at her resolve. They made their way further into the ballroom, sampling canapés and greeting a handful of familiar faces. Grace was there with her boyfriend and waved Sophia over to a corner. They chatted for a while, Grace tossing in witty remarks about Lucas's over-the-top decor choices. Still, an undercurrent of tension wove through the evening. From across the room, Lucas and Madison commanded attention. Madison was perfectly poised, sophistication in every gesture. Lucas, for his part, looked proud, almost smug, as he introduced Madison to important figures in the crowd. It was a showcase of social maneuvering that made Sophia's head spin. Partway through the night, a hush fell over the ballroom. Lucas tapped a microphone. "Good evening, everyone," he announced, his voice echoing. "Madison and I want to thank you for joining us to celebrate our engagement. We're so thrilled to share our happiness with all of you." Polite applause rippled across the room. Madison took the mic with a gracious smile. "I couldn't be more grateful to have Lucas by my side. We look forward to many more milestones together, and we're touched to have our friends and family supporting us tonight. Thank you." Another round of applause. Lucas handed the mic to the band, which launched into a lively tune. People resumed their conversations as waiters brought out fresh glasses of champagne. Ethan leaned toward Sophia. "You've handled yourself like a queen," he whispered. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "I think I've had enough closure for one night. Maybe we can slip out soon." Just then, a voice cut in from behind them, cold and sharp. "Leaving already? You haven't even congratulated the happy couple properly." It was Lucas's mother, Margaret Grant, a woman known for her pearls and her icy judgments. She'd once adored Sophia, at least until the divorce, when she seemed to decide Sophia was the problem. "Hello, Margaret," Sophia said, keeping her tone calm. Margaret's gaze slid over Ethan, sizing him up. "And who is this gentleman?" Before Sophia could answer, Ethan stepped in with a polite smile. "Ethan Blackwell, ma'am. I'm here with Sophia tonight." Margaret's eyes narrowed, as if trying to calculate his worth just by looking. "You look familiar. Have we met before?" Ethan remained perfectly composed. "I'm not sure," he said smoothly, Perhaps at a charity event. That must be it, Margaret replied coolly, before turning her attention back to Sophia. I suppose it's good you've moved on, though some of us wonder if you'll ever truly appreciate what Lucas brought to your life. Ethan's jaw tightened just slightly, but he said nothing, giving Sophia space to respond. Sophia refused to wilt under Margaret's disdain. Still, beneath her outward poise, Sophia felt the sting of Margaret's words as if they were tiny shards of glass. The old sense of inadequacy rose up, sharp and immediate, reminding her of every time she'd been found lacking, every time she'd been reminded that she wasn't quite the daughter-in-law Margaret had wanted. Her cheeks flushed, and for one awful second, she feared her composure would crack in front of all these polished strangers. The ballroom suddenly seemed too bright, the laughter too loud, and she was a spotlighted target. No longer a guest, but an object of silent judgment. She dug her nails into her palm, willing herself to stand tall, to answer without letting her voice shake. With all due respect, that's not really your concern anymore. I wish Lucas and Madison the best. Margaret's lips thinned. Well, do enjoy the party. She turned and walked away, leaving a trail of tension in her wake. Ethan put a supportive hand on Sophia's back. Are you all right? I'm fine, Sophia said quietly. Let's step outside for a moment. They walked onto a small terrace overlooking the city lights, the music and chatter from the ballroom now just a soft background hum. Sophia finally exhaled, letting go of the tension. She always knew how to make me feel small. Ethan rubbed her shoulder gently. You're not inadequate. I'm proud of you for standing your ground. Sophia nodded, but for a moment she stared out at the city lights, blinking away a prick of tears she refused to let fall. She was supposed to be past this, past letting Margaret or Lucas or anyone else's opinions dictate how she felt about herself. But the wounds were still there, just beneath the surface, never quite healing all the way. A gust of wind lifted Sophia's hair. She turned to thank Ethan again, but suddenly a flurry of voices from inside caught their attention. They exchanged worried glances and stepped back in to see Lucas at the microphone, Madison at his side, both looking flustered. Please, everyone, remain calm, Lucas's voice boomed through the speakers. The crowd was buzzing with unease. Sophia noticed a large security guard making his way through the guests, heading right for them. Excuse me, Mr. Blackwell, the guard said, eyes darting between Ethan and Lucas on stage. Could you come with me, please? Sophia's heart dropped. She gripped Ethan's arm. What's going on? The guard looked uncomfortable. We received a tip that a certain guest may be here under false pretenses. A hush fell as guests turned to watch the scene unfold. Lucas took the mic again, his voice strained. Ethan Blackwell, we need to verify your credentials. We can't allow anyone to crash this event. A wave of disbelief swept through Sophia. She shot Lucas a glare. You invited us, indirectly, but still. Madison stepped up to the microphone, her eyes darting nervously between Lucas and Ethan. Lucas, this doesn't have to be a scene. Ethan calmly raised his hands. It's all right, he said to the guard. I can clarify who I am. He turned, scanning the crowd. But I'd also like to know who made this accusation. People were whispering, rumors buzzing through the ballroom. Sophia glared at Lucas, suspecting he'd orchestrated this humiliation. Lucas, for his part, looked genuinely confused. Margaret, standing nearby, looked smug. Suddenly, a distinguished older man in the corner, someone Sophia recognized as Madison's father, Richard Brooks, stepped forward. I made the call, he announced in a clipped, authoritative voice. He approached, leveling Ethan with a steely gaze. I've heard stories about you, Mr. Blackwell, rumors that you claim to be philanthropic and wealthy, but no one seems to know exactly where your fortune comes from. We can't just let anyone into these circles. Sophia felt outrage flare up inside her. He's not just anyone. Ethan gently squeezed her hand, signaling her to stay calm. He faced Richard Brooks with remarkable composure. Sir, you're right that I keep my finances private, but I can assure you I'm more than qualified to be here. If you'd like, we can step aside to verify anything you need. A tense standoff followed. Lucas cleared his throat, uncertain. Madison looked mortified by her father's outburst. The security guard waited, glancing between the men. Ethan calmly reached into his jacket and produced a business card. He handed it to the guard. If you call this number, my office will confirm my identity. I'm a principal investor in Archway, among other ventures. A ripple of recognition ran through the crowd. Archway was a prominent name in the tech world. Richard Brooks paled, snatching the card from the guard and reading it. Lucas's eyes flickered with confusion, and perhaps envy. Madison's father exhaled sharply, realizing the gravity of his mistake in calling out Ethan so publicly. The guard spoke quietly into his earpiece, then nodded. "It's confirmed, sir. My apologies, Mr. Blackwell." He stepped back, leaving Ethan unimpeded. An uneasy silence hung over the room as Ethan turned toward Lucas and Madison, his voice calm and composed. "Congratulations again on your engagement," Ethan said to Lucas and Madison, his tone even. "But I think we'll be leaving now." With that, he took Sophia's arm, guiding her out of the ballroom. Grace hurried behind them, muttering curses under her breath at the humiliation they'd all just witnessed. Out in the lobby, Sophia's emotions finally boiled over. "I can't believe they tried to throw you out like some kind of fraud," she said, blinking back tears of anger. Ethan's expression softened. "I've dealt with worse. Let's just go home." But Sophia could barely contain the swirl of emotions rising in her chest as they stepped out into the cool night air. Humiliation, outrage, and beneath it all, a raw, familiar ache she recognized from years past. For one bitter moment, she wondered if she was somehow to blame, if her presence in Ethan's life had made him a target. That old, poisonous voice, the one Lucas and Margaret had planted, whispered that she brought trouble wherever she went. She knew it wasn't true, but the echo lingered. As they stepped out into the night, a single, undeniable truth crystallized in Sophia's mind. Lucas and Madison hadn't just tried to embarrass her, they'd tried to humiliate Ethan too. The gloves were off now. Whatever happened next, she knew the fallout would only get more explosive. The morning after the disastrous engagement party, social media buzzed with gossip. News about the scene at the Four Seasons had spread fast, with tabloids and society blogs splashing headlines like "Billionaire investor mistaken for party crasher," and "Fiancée's father sparks showdown at lavish engagement." Sophia woke to a flood of texts from Grace, gleefully describing the online drama. Even Lucas had called her late the night before, leaving a voicemail she ignored. She didn't care to hear his excuses, but curiosity finally made her listen. Lucas's voice sounded flustered. "Sophia, hey, I'm sorry about what happened tonight. I had no idea Madison's father would react like that. Maybe we can talk soon and clear the air? Let me know." She deleted the message, annoyance mixing with a strange sense of satisfaction. There was comfort in knowing that Ethan's identity was now public. He was no longer just a quiet outsider, but a respected figure in the city's most exclusive circles. Ethan himself handled the whole fiasco with his usual calm. That morning, he invited Sophia to his penthouse for breakfast. Over coffee and pastries, he recounted the previous night's chaos with a hint of amusement. "I guess the Brooks family now thinks I'm some con artist who managed to sneak my way into high society," he joked. "It's not the first time people have questioned my background." Sophia frowned over the rim of her mug. "It isn't fair. You've done so much good through your philanthropy, and you still have to prove yourself." Her fingers trembled slightly as she set down her mug, and for a moment she looked away, unable to keep the hurt from showing. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm dragging you into all this, into my mess, my history." Her voice was small, barely above a whisper. She forced a smile, but couldn't quite hide the worry in her eyes. "You deserve better than to be put on the spot like that." He shrugged. "Money complicates relationships. People see the fortune and either want something from me or suspect I have some hidden agenda." Reaching across the small breakfast table, he brushed his thumb over her hand. "That's one reason I never talk about it much, but I don't want you to get caught in the crossfire." Still, Sophia shook her head, lacing her fingers with Ethan's. "I'm proud of who you are, Ethan. If anyone has a problem with it, that's on them." A warmth flickered in his eyes, and he leaned in to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. Just then, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his eyebrows drawing together. "Everything okay?" Sophia asked. He sighed. "It's an urgent matter with one of my companies, something about an acquisition. I might need to fly out to San Francisco tomorrow." Sophia set down her coffee, concern showing in her eyes. "For how long?" "A couple days, maybe a week. I'm not sure yet," Ethan exhaled. Sorry about the timing, I hate leaving right after all this. She offered a reassuring smile. Don't worry, go take care of your business. I'll be fine. But as she watched him gather his things, a twinge of anxiety threaded through her resolve. She wanted to be supportive, to prove that she was as independent as Ethan believed. Still, she couldn't help but wonder. If Lucas started stirring up trouble again while Ethan was away, would she be strong enough to face it alone? The fear was irrational, but it pressed in on her anyway, making her wonder if there was a limit to her newfound strength. She hated how the past could still reach out and rattle her, even on days when she felt most secure. They spent the rest of the day together, strolling through the park and browsing a local art exhibit, choosing to ignore the media frenzy swirling around them. With Ethan, Sophia felt a growing sense of security, as though together they could face anything. Still, beneath her calm, she carried the nagging suspicion that Lucas wouldn't let this incident rest. He thrived on control and hated being outdone. Now that Ethan's status was public, Sophia was sure Lucas would feel threatened, and when Lucas felt threatened, trouble tended to follow. Her instincts weren't wrong. Late that afternoon, just as she was heading back to her apartment, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Sophia? It's Madison. The voice trembled, trying and failing to sound composed. Can we meet? I need to talk to you about Lucas. Sophia's pulse quickened. Madison? Why would she call? Sophia half expected some sort of ambush or a reprimand for overshadowing the engagement party, but curiosity pushed her to agree. She couldn't admit, not even to herself, how much the call unsettled her. Was she walking into some kind of trap, or did Madison genuinely want help? Sophia tried to quiet her spinning thoughts, reminding herself she wasn't the same vulnerable woman Lucas had left behind. Even so, as she hung up the phone, the familiar knot of worry and self-doubt tightened in her chest. They arranged to meet at a quiet tea shop the next day. As Sophia hung up, unease settled in her stomach. Madison's tone hadn't been gloating or confrontational. It had sounded almost desperate. Maybe there were cracks in the perfect facade of Lucas and Madison's engagement. And if so, what secrets might come spilling out? The next day, under a gray sky threatening rain, Sophia slipped into a corner booth at Marlowe's tea house downtown. The cozy shop was famous for its extensive selection of loose-leaf teas and its peaceful atmosphere. Madison arrived soon after, wearing a simple black trench over a cream blouse, her posture rigid with tension. Thank you for meeting me, Madison said softly, settling into the seat across from Sophia. Her hands shook as she took off her coat. Sophia studied Madison's face. There were dark circles under her eyes. She looked nothing like the radiant fiancée from the engagement party. No problem, Sophia replied. What's going on? A server appeared and Madison ordered chamomile tea while Sophia asked for Earl Grey. They waited in awkward silence until the server left. Madison cleared her throat. I know this might sound strange, but I don't have many people I can talk to about Lucas. He hardly ever mentions you, but I did some digging. I know how your marriage ended, how suddenly, how painfully. Sophia's stomach tightened. What do you want to know? Madison laced her fingers together. Is he always this controlling? I've seen glimpses, like last night, how he handled the fiasco with your boyfriend. He was furious, not because his father embarrassed Ethan, but because he felt overshadowed. We had a huge fight afterward. Sophia studied Madison's face, weighing how honest to be. Finally, she decided there was no point sugarcoating it. Lucas needs to win, Sophia began quietly. Everything in our marriage turned into a competition. It wasn't always like that. When we met in college, he was ambitious but kind. Over time, though, success became his obsession. He wanted me to meet impossible standards, and if I couldn't, he belittled me. That's when the fight started. He never saw me as his equal. It was always about him. Madison's eyes filled with tears. I'm starting to see that too. After last night, he stormed around our apartment, shouting about how he'd be damned if he let some nobody show him up. I pointed out that Ethan is obviously not a nobody, and Lucas lost it. She looked down at her hands, voice trembling. I have money and connections, but Lucas wants me for more than that. He wants me to help him climb even higher. A wave of empathy washed over Sophia. For all her resentment, she understood how disarming Lucas's charm could be, how easy it was to get swept up in his grand visions. "So why reach out to me?" Sophia asked gently. Madison hesitated, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. "Because I'm not sure I can go through with this engagement, and I need to know if Lucas has done anything questionable in the past, financially or otherwise. My father is pushing for the wedding, but I'm scared." Sophia's thoughts drifted back to their own arguments about money. Lucas had once tried to persuade her to dip into her personal savings for a risky business deal. When she refused, he'd called her short-sighted and unsupportive. But had he ever done anything illegal? Not that she knew of. "I can't say he ever broke the law," Sophia admitted, "but he does manipulate situations to his advantage, often at someone else's expense." Madison seemed to deflate, her shoulders sagging. "He's pressuring me to sign a prenup that heavily favors him, something about future earnings tied to my father's investments." Sophia's eyebrows shot up. "That's a huge red flag." "I know," Madison said, her voice cracking. "He wants me to sign before we set a wedding date. My father says it's just standard business, but I'm not comfortable. And after last night, hearing him rant about Ethan, I realized I don't even know the man I'm supposed to marry." A wave of sympathy washed over Sophia. Whatever anger she felt toward Lucas, she couldn't deny that Madison was caught in a toxic situation. "You have every right to be cautious." Sophia spoke softly. "Listen, if you ever need someone to talk to or just a place to clear your head, you can call me. I'm not your enemy. Lucas is my past." Madison bowed her head. "Thank you. I appreciate it." They sipped their tea in thoughtful silence. After a few minutes, Madison spoke again. "I'm planning to confront Lucas about postponing the wedding, at least until I feel safe about everything. I don't know how he'll react." Sophia remembered Lucas's explosive temper when pushed. "Whatever you decide, just be careful. Lucas can be vindictive if he feels betrayed. Keep your support system close." Madison nodded, blinking back tears. "I will. And Sophia, I'm sorry about how my father treated Ethan. He just assumes everyone's after our money, but he crossed the line." Sophia offered a gentle smile. "Apology accepted." They parted outside the tea shop, clouds overhead, threatening rain as Madison walked away, shoulders hunched against the wind. Sophia felt a wave of complicated emotion. Pity for Madison, disgust for Lucas, and a rush of relief that she'd escaped that life. Yet even as she watched Madison disappear down the block, Sophia felt a sudden shiver of anxiety ripple through her. The memory of Lucas's temper, how quickly affection could turn to cruelty, how effortless it was for him to rewrite the story to make her the villain, rose up unbidden. She wondered, not for the first time, if she'd truly escaped, or if some shadow of that old fear would always follow her. Would Lucas turn his anger on Madison the way he had once turned it on her? Sophia hugged her coat tighter around her, wishing she could let go of the past as easily as she pretended. But she also sensed their conversation would have consequences. If Madison chose to confront Lucas, she could provoke a side of him. Sophia knew all too well, the side that never forgave, never forgot a slight. A storm was brewing, one that could turn all their lives upside down. The next morning, Sophia woke to a flurry of frantic texts from Grace. Half awake, she turned on the TV just in time for a breaking news alert. Lucas Grant under investigation for fraud. Just days after his self-important engagement party, he was now the target of a high-profile inquiry into alleged financial crimes. Reporters claimed he had falsified records in a major corporate merger, using his fiancée's family connections for illegal gains. A swirl of emotions washed over Sophia: shock, vindication, and a lingering sadness for someone she'd once loved. Part of her recoiled at the public spectacle, part of her mourned the hopeful man she'd married, long before ambition and pride ruined everything. In the privacy of her kitchen, Sophia pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, overwhelmed by a surge of guilt and relief. She wondered if she should feel glad for Madison's sake, or sorry for the man Lucas could have been. Her phone rang again, and Grace breathlessly filled her in. Madison's father, Richard Brooks, had pulled all his support, and rumor had it Madison herself had turned over evidence to investigators. Lucas, suddenly facing possible arrest, was desperate and alone. As Sophia tried to process the gossip, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She answered, bracing herself. "Sophia," came Lucas's unmistakable, frantic voice. I'm out of options. They've frozen my accounts, and Madison's gone. You have to help me." His words tumbled out in a panicked rush. She could almost hear him pacing, his anger barely contained. She replied curtly, "I'm not your wife anymore, and your problems aren't mine. If you forged documents or tricked investors, that's on you." He let out a jagged laugh. "Everyone thinks they know better. All these high society people only care about one thing, winning. I played by their rules, and now I'm the villain. Even you're abandoning me." His tone turned bitter. "You do realize Ethan and his billions won't always be there to clean up your messes, right?" Sophia bristled, but kept her voice even. "My life isn't tangled up with yours anymore. Don't ever call me again." He hung up abruptly, leaving her shaken, but, strangely, free. She realized in that moment that Lucas's downfall brought true closure. She no longer felt any lingering responsibility. He was now only a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition, and she was finished carrying the weight of his mistakes. But as she set her phone down, Sophia's hands shook. The anger and disbelief in Lucas's voice still echoed in her ears, raking up memories of old fights and colder silences. For a fleeting moment, guilt threatened to swallow her. Had she been too harsh? Was it wrong to turn her back on someone she'd once loved, even after everything? But deep down, she knew that pity and self-doubt were just remnants of the control Lucas had always tried to exert over her. She drew in a slow breath, reminding herself she was allowed to choose her own peace. She didn't owe him her future, just because she'd been a part of his past. 2 days later, Sophia's boyfriend, Ethan Blackwell, returned from his business trip in San Francisco. The moment she saw him step off the elevator into his penthouse, relief washed over her. She dropped her bag and wrapped him in a tight embrace. He stroked her hair, murmuring how much he'd missed her, before she led him to the sofa. "Julian," she began softly, "while you were gone, Lucas's entire world collapsed. He's under investigation. Madison broke off the engagement, and now he's basically begging me for help." Ethan's brow furrowed in concern. "He called you?" She nodded. "He wants money for a better lawyer." I refused. It felt harsh, but I couldn't let him pull me back into his mess. Even as she recounted the conversation, a trace of shame lingered. She wasn't used to putting herself first, wasn't used to closing the door on someone else's pain, no matter how much they deserved it. But Ethan's calm presence, his steady support, reminded her that survival wasn't selfishness. Ethan exhaled, obvious relief in his voice. "I'm proud of you for setting boundaries. If you ever feel threatened, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." They spent the next few hours catching up, talking about the swirl of legal drama and media attention. Even the tabloids took a special interest, drawing connections between Ethan's quiet influence and Lucas's very public downfall. Sophia hated the gossip, but Ethan assured her the rumors would pass. That evening, they attended a charity art auction supporting local artists. As they walked into the gallery, photographers snapped photos of Ethan, now widely recognized as one of the city's leading philanthropists. Sophia stiffened under the attention, but he leaned in, whispering, "Relax, we're here for a good cause." Bolstered by his warmth, she wandered through the exhibits, eventually falling in love with a vibrant, modern painting. Ethan outbid everyone, gifting Sophia the artwork with a quiet, triumphant smile. They hosted a small gathering with close friends in Ethan's penthouse, to celebrate both Sophia's new contract with a boutique hotel group and the addition of the stunning art piece to her portfolio. Grace arrived, hugging Sophia and animatedly sharing the latest about Lucas's investigation, from canceled contracts to furious investors. While part of Sophia felt a sting of pity, she couldn't deny a deep sense of affirmation that she'd made the right decision by leaving him. Later that night, after the guests left, Sophia and Ethan sat alone in the softly lit living room. The city lights glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off the newly mounted painting. With a glass of wine in hand, Sophia gazed at the skyline, feeling a profound sense of peace. Gone were the days when she questioned her worth because of Lucas's criticisms or endured his backhanded compliments. She turned to Ethan, who watched her with quiet tenderness. "I never thought I'd end up here," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "A year ago, I was still so broken from the divorce. Now, everything feels possible." Ethan took her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. You deserve a partner who sees your brilliance, not someone who tears you down to make himself feel bigger. A wry smile tugged at his lips. As for the rest, my money, my connections, I want you to know I admire your independence. I'm here to support you, but you've already proven you can stand on your own. His words filled her with a warmth that melted away any lingering insecurity. Together, they stepped up to the wide window. The city spread out below like an endless tapestry of light. Sophia leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, remembering the woman she used to be, shadowed by Lucas's demands, made to feel less than enough. She had reclaimed her life, reignited her passion for architecture, and opened her heart to a man who cherished her dreams rather than stifling them. Below, the bright energy of Boston pulsed, indifferent to one man's downfall or another's triumph. But in that quiet, intimate moment, Sophia felt truly renewed, free from her past and embracing a future filled with hope. Lucas's fall might have made headlines, but Sophia had already moved on. Hand in hand with a man who valued her strength, not her history, she had gone from heartbreak to healing. A reminder that even when love turns toxic, we can rise wiser, stronger, and more whole. Sophia hadn't sought revenge. She simply chose peace, growth, and a future she truly deserved. So the story has ended, and if you're still here with me, it means something in Sophia's journey has touched your heart, maybe in ways you didn't expect. Let's take a moment together, just us, to ask, what do we really take from this story? Because I think there's more here than a high society scandal or dramatic showdowns. At its core, Sophia's story isn't just about a love triangle or a billionaire boyfriend. It's about reclaiming your own worth after you've been broken down, and learning that healing is not about seeking revenge, but about finding peace within yourself. How often do we let old voices, old criticisms, or past heartbreaks define who we are in the present? Have you ever doubted your own value just because someone else couldn't see it? Sophia reminds us that no matter how messy the past gets, no matter who tries to make us feel small, we always have the power to rewrite our own story. It's about setting boundaries, choosing the people who respect your spirit, and giving yourself permission to dream again, even when it feels scary. And listen, I know that's hard. I know some days it feels like your old wounds will never fully heal. But as the philosopher Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Healing isn't always loud or showy. Sometimes the best kind of revenge is to live a life that's truly your own, quietly, bravely, and beautifully. If you're still watching, I hope you take this message to heart. You are not your past. You're not the sum of anyone else's opinions or mistakes. Trust me, you deserve to step into the light, just as Sophia did, and find people who see your brilliance for what it truly is. If this story resonated with you, even just a little, go ahead and hit like, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more stories about real strength and healing. Your journey matters too. And hey, don't forget, sometimes the most exquisite comeback is just quietly choosing yourself. Let's keep growing together.